Oh my God! Welcome back to 24. Live Another Day recap, season 9, episode 7, or from what is it, 5 to 6 o'clock?
Yep.
We are here back to talk more about 24. Now, this episode of 24. Let's get right to it, Joe. This episode of 24 was the most ridiculous yet. And I don't mean that in necessarily a bad way. It was just completely ridiculous. We had Jack Bauer driving down the street with drone missiles firing. I mean, like, he's doing Fast and Furious, driving down the street with a missile racing him. We had people shooting in a hospital, and somehow the whole hospital didn't blow up. These missiles have varying degrees of being powerful. Sometimes they blow up whole buildings, and sometimes they can just blow a single room in a hospital. Yeah. Apparently no one really cares about the hospital. We had so much ridiculosity. We had Jack Bauer showing emotion for the first time. No more Vulcan good guy Captain America Jack Bauer.
What emotion he showed? I didn't see any.
He hates these people. He comes straight out, and he said to Kate, when Kate's like, Jack, you need to calm down a little bit, after he starts torturing Simone El Harazi, by pushing in her wound with a finger. He doesn't even have to torture her that much. He's like, I'm torturing you with my little finger.
Yep.
How's that little finger doing for you, honey? And she goes, why are you doing this? He goes, I hate these people. He never says that stuff before. Even when he's getting beat, he stays all professional. But anyways, guys, this is the post-episode recaps at the Issues program. If this is your first time checking this out, please hit that subscribe button. If you have anything to say about 24, Live Another Day, please comment away in the comment section below. We really appreciate anything you guys have to say about the episode as well. We are past the halfway point. We still have not had a time lapse, which we're supposed to have with 24, and we're right in on it. I got to say, this was the most ridiculous episode of the season, but again, I liked how this episode was more Jack-based. For me, we talked a lot about this last week. If 24 is going to work, I think it needs to be this ridiculous. I think it needs to be like Rambo, Expandables level ridiculous. It can't be based in reality. The more it tries to be based in reality, the more I'm kind of like, I roll my eyes at it, and I'm like, ugh. But when that crazy shit happens, I'm just like, yes,
yeah,
yes.
There was only one part of the crazy shit that I was like, oh my God, that's ridiculous.
Which part?
They get into after the hospital blows up. They get into the car, and the whatever her name, Caitlin's like, oh, there they are. They're getting in the car. So the guy fires another missile at the car, which lands right behind the car.
Oh yeah.
Sending the two cars that were on the sides of him 10 feet in the air. But because he moved forward 2 feet, his car leaves unscathed. All the other cars fly up in the air from the explosion, but his, no, it's fine. It drives away just fine.
Jack Bauer's unbeatable, unbreakable skin extends past the bounds of a human and covers the car too. Kind of like when Michael Keaton pushes the Batman switch in Batman, when it just all gets covered up and the criminals can't do anything against it.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Even in the Christian Bale Batman, he's driving next to the cops on the highway, and Bale presses the button, and they look out the window, they don't even see it. Never mind like radar stealth, they have like eyeball stealth.
I know it gets oversaid, and we're past the point where Chuck Norris jokes are funny, but Bauer is a cross between Batman and Chuck Norris. There's just no other way of saying it. He has that same level of the way he can interrogate someone is very Batman-like, and the way he escapes and just has nothing seems to hurt him, and it all bounces off the Teflon. Seems like
he's Chuck Norris, only he doesn't live in a roundhouse. He lives in Big Brother's house.
I like that. But seriously though, Jack Bauer, I think that would be the ultimate 24 villain if they brought in Chuck Norris as a 24 villain. And considering he just did the Expendables movie, he might. He
was a good guy in the Expendables movie. But he's open. What's he doing? He's doing Total Gym commercials and cameos in the Expendable movie.
Say what you want about Kiefer Sutherland, but he's never afraid to play a bad guy. He loves the 24 character and obviously loves Jack Bauer and has fully embraced it as being that's his character in the lexicon of of American entertainment. It's Jack Bauer. But he's never been afraid in a movie, whether it's The Lost Boys, whether it's Flatliners, whether it's many other examples of it. Kiefer Sutherland plays an excellent bad guy, too. I think the problem with Jean-Claude and Steven Seagal and Chuck Norris to a certain extent is all of those guys, when in their peak, when they were at the top of their game, probably could have extended their careers, especially Steven Seagal. I guess he got offered a lot of villain roles that he turned down because he said, I don't want to lose the fight in the end.
Well,
And
it's not just that. That's not his personality. He's not a bad guy. I don't think it would transfer well. I don't think he could do it
so,
well.
Joe, obviously he's not an actor either.
No, he's not. But his movies are amazing. I love Steven Seagal. I love each and every single one of his fight scenes, and it's the first time in movies where fight scenes didn't last 30 minutes.
Now,
He would get to Tommy Lee Jones. The fight is like a 3-minute fight.
yeah, and he just choked one move in the neck and the guy's dead.
You know,
And
slap, done.
now, you might be wondering why we're talking about action movies. I think it's very relevant to the discussion here because ultimately, especially in this episode, that's what 24 became. This was all action, pure action from beginning to end of awesome Bauer at his best, running around, going crazy, doing his thing. Kate Morgan, Joe's prime candidate for the 24 spinoff, has even kind of took a back seat in this episode where until this episode she's been in the forefront.
Well, we got her badass action last week where she was all hooked up and killed that dude. So
yeah, and in this week we kind of just got her in the supportive role to Jack Bauer and being like, oh, Jack, should you do this? Should you not do this? Just kind of being a voice of reason. Was this all worth it? Kind of attitude with that. And this central focus on this episode was Jack Bauer, and same with Jack Bauer and Heller. It was a combination of the two of them, and just like Heller being a big character from before, in previous episodes we got a little bit more of Bordeaux or Audrey. In this episode we definitely got a lot more from directly the president and Jack Bauer's perspective. It was kind of their episode. So let's get right into it. It is at 5 p.m. when this episode starts, and we see the EMTs and the ambulance guy workers. I don't know if they call them EMTs in Britain, but whatever. They are working on Simone on the street as she sits there after getting smashed by a bus in the most comedic moment of 24 ever. And we get the little girl. I think her name is Yasmin Bleeth over here, and she's standing there with the guy, the neighbor guy that I was sure was gonna die, who's comforting her, being, it's okay, your mom's dead and your aunt tried to kill you. It's okay, don't worry, little girl. I'm sure you're gonna be fine when you grow up. I'm sure you're not gonna have any trauma because of this. None whatsoever. So the cops.
Is she your mom, little girl? No, she killed my mom.
Killed my mom, yeah, and that the cop asks her that question, and that's her reply. And they load.
At first, she's kind of like catatonic, standing next to the guy that was chasing after the Simone, chasing after her.
Yeah.
Instantly, it was a good neighbor moment because he instantly knew that something was extremely wrong. That this woman was chasing the little girl, and the little girl wasn't responding to him. So I thought that was cool that he ran after her and was kind of standing there with her after Simone had gotten hit by the bus.
I also thought it was interesting that the little girl, and we'll get to it later, or we'll make mention of it later, but I want to just talk about the little girl here for a second. I think it was really interesting how her reaction to that, too, ultimately wasn't one of sadness. She'll be sad later. Her immediate reaction when she talks to Kate later about it is, I want this girl to die.
Yeah.
I want her dead. Can we kill her, please? Can we do that?
Wonder if that's like a uniquely Middle Eastern.
Whoa, well, I don't know about that, but I can't lie if I wasn't thinking similar to the fact of maybe not Middle Eastern, but in the association of the family. I mean, we can say what we want about Naveed after the fact.
Well, he's married into that family.
But I'm saying he married into the family. You think he maybe knew before he married? I mean, obviously what happened to Margot's husband was probably moderately common knowledge, so it's safe to assume that maybe they would have known what kind of family they were getting involved with. So I don't know. That's difficult.
No, they didn't know anything about what kind of family they were getting involved with. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been like this big secret. Like, oh no, go find out what she knows. She would know that they were partial terrorists or terrorists.
Or at least warm to the idea of it.
Right.
At least open. Now, Kate watches as the men from last week are bagged and tagged and put away for the shooting. Jack grabs some car keys from a vehicle and walks over to our friend Belichick, who again gets the jip in this. They got to be leading this guy up for something all season. Otherwise, why just even have him show up? Jack comes over and he cuts this guy out. And he goes and he yells at the
almost immediately as he gets put down on his knees. And he's completely silent. He doesn't acknowledge Jack Bauer whatsoever. He obviously sees him in the room. Everyone sees Jack Bauer, right? So he sees him, and he doesn't say anything. Doesn't even acknowledge him. We don't see him like looking at him or anything, exchanging that 24 look from across the room that's in every episode, But and Jack just instantly walks over and snips his cuffs that are behind his back and stands him up. The CIA equivalent was an MI5 or Section 20 or whatever they call themselves over there in England comes over and is like, "What are you doing? That's our prisoner." Jack Bauer's having none of it. None of it. He instantly says, "He's mine." And they just start walking away,
Yeah, and they're like, "No, you can't have him." And he's like, "No, this guy is mine, and you guys screwed up. Why the hell were you even there, you dumbasses? The president gave me autonomy." Sorry, everybody, if I had to run away for a second. I had to turn off the air conditioner because I finally realized why my camera was moving left and right is because the air conditioner was blowing the camera, and that was moving left to right. So that makes sense now. So Jack asks...
Lazy key grip, right?
Yeah, totally. Whoever's setting up this shoot is... come on, buddy. Who puts a camera on a window shade? Come on. Cheap budget here at Issues Studios. So Jack asks, "What the hell? Who the hell ordered that? Who ordered the code red?" And we've mentioned this before. Jack Bauer was, of course, in A Few Good Men as well. Played Kendrick, and again played a bad guy. Just to go to what we were saying at the beginning, and played
not necessarily a bad guy. He was following orders.
Right, but he played a little bit more of a prick than a nice guy, where we had a couple other guys in that movie that were playing orders.
Participated in ordering the code red.
Yeah, exactly. And he's the one that also he had a little bit of an ego and a little bit of a problem. Kendrick was his character.
And of course he was lying about the whole thing, which shows character flaw and all that.
Exactly. Well, I guess this gets into a different story, and we were talking a little bit about this in one of the Walking Dead, I believe it might have been, or it might have been one of the Game of Thrones podcasts, about at what point does a soldier, from television, we're not talking about reality, in television, at what point is the soldier responsible for the commanding officer? If you do what your commanding officer says, are you going to have to take the responsibility for it? Or is it the commanding officer's fault for issuing the orders? I mean...
it's something that's illegal, like going to assault a fellow soldier, then I think it's your responsibility to deny that order. But if it's, I guess there's... So the thing is there's this whole chain of command thing. So essentially when you get given a order that you don't agree with and you want to fight it, you're supposed to go straight to the guy that gave you the order. Then he's supposed to take it up the ladder. It's a flawed system. I don't exactly know how it works, but it's a flawed system.
It's a weird concept to take it, and I'll be direct out and say it. It's a weird concept for us as civilians to really get. Because to us, we're thinking, oh, bad thing. We go to our supervisor. Our supervisor doesn't do anything about it. Oh, the supervisor's embezzling too, or whatever. We should go to the president of the company. In a military situation, that's considered. You don't do that. You don't sell out the officer. You stay, as Joe was saying, in the chain of command. And in this situation,
chance to do what he's supposed to do, his job.
Yep, and in this chain of command, the Prime Minister Davies really fucked over Jack because he and all these soldiers were the arm of him, but ultimately this was the Prime Minister who did it, and Jack is pissed off about it.
When he finally gets in the, we're not at the scene where he gets in the room with the.
No, we'll get to that in a second. So he goes, Jack goes over to Kate and asks how she is after her torture and everything, and Kate wants to know if it was worth it. And Jack says, well, we might have some information here. And this is where we get a little bit of Chloe. Chloe wasn't as big a part of this episode. She came at the beginning. Oh, yeah, she did. And she came at the end. But
you say it's me. I think it's you. You're the one that starts with the Chloe comments.
So it's the hair. I can't. I like a goth chick.
Sure, it's not the eyeshadow.
Yeah, I don't know. I like that too. That's kind of hot. So Chloe gets on the horn with Jack and says that she saw the police and paramedics, and she heard that Simone got hit. How is she? She said that as far as she can look into it, or Jack asked her how she's doing, and Chloe said as far as she can look into it, it doesn't seem good. It doesn't seem good. But Chloe gets a message out there, and she goes to the window, and because she gets a message from somebody. We assume, especially when we get our thing later on, that of who our bad guy is that Benjamin Bratt was talking to. We're assuming this was Adrian Cross that sent her the message, get the hell out of here. But Adrian Cross seemed a little busy when we saw him later in the episode. So I think I missed
the scene with Adrian Cross later in the episode. I immediately thought that it was Adrian Cross that sent that.
I think that's shouldn't dwell on this too much because I think you're right. I think ultimately I agree. It's the obvious thing is that it's Adrian Cross, but I guess somewhere inside of me I'm hoping it was someone else. But well, I don't.
It's pretty obvious to me that it's going to be Adrian Cross. Otherwise, that last phone conversation we had with Bratt and his cohort, we get the feeling like he's going to sell Bratt out if he has to. And that would prompt Bratt to send, the British forces over to the anonymous headquarters.
No, I agree, and that was a warning shot of some sort. I guess what I'm thinking, and it also makes sense to this point where I bet we get to a point at the climax of the season where Chloe has to make a decision to side with Jack and go back to her old life essentially, or go with the Cross, where he says, "Listen, it's a lot. Cross is gonna be like it's a line in the sand. You need to. I have some XYZ plans going on. And if you're not a part of it, you're gonna die because everyone that's right there is gonna die."
And if you don't do what I say, your husband was already convicted, you'll be convicted, you'll lose your job, you'll go to jail, I'll still be here, you better pick me over Jack, all that shit.
That being said, I still do not think that Adrian Cross is working for Margot El-Harazi. I think Adrian Cross, and I'm stealing this idea, but I feel the same. I had the same idea. Another podcast I listened to, this guy Josh Wigler, had a similar perspective, and I was thinking the same thing when I was watching it. I have a feeling Cross is working for the Prime Minister, and this was all sort of the Prime Minister enlisted the group of the WikiLeaks group to bring out bad light on the fact of the United States drone thing, to get the drones out of England. And the Prime Minister is a bad.
No, I don't get that feeling. I think the Prime Minister is getting something out of the deal too. It's not just the United States saying we're going to put drones in England. There's definitely something coming from. They're getting something out of it too. I don't necessarily think Adrian's working for the Prime Minister.
I just don't think he's working.
Why would they bring in the CIA? Get the CIA involved. That's an American organization.
I hear what you're saying. I guess there's two things that have me thinking this. One is that I think the Prime Minister is more than he seems. I think some hinky stuff might be going on with him. And number two, I just can't connect the dots between Cross and El-Harazi. I think Cross is working for somebody else besides El-Harazi. And usually in 24, just usually, we've met the person before. It's not some unmentioned supervillain. It's somebody we've seen before.
Yeah,
and the Prime Minister.
I don't think it's the Prime Minister. As far as hinky shit, presidents, prime ministers, they all have some pretty hinky shit going on. Those are the guys that are in charge of the CIA Black Ops, organizations and the Section 20s and all that stuff. Like, they have hinky shit going left and right. billion-dollar contracts between companies and countries.
This is what I love about 24, though, because it is this. We know some hinky shit's going on. We know things have yet to be dissolved.
I don't want it to be Stephen Fry. I'm going to say no. It is not Peter. It is not Peter's friends. That's it.
Okay, fair enough. And my vote's going for there. So we will see. We will see in the next. We are past the halfway point. We only have 5 more episodes of 24 after this, so everything's getting mainlined. What could have been the Adrian Cross reveal that we get later with Bratt, probably if this was a normal season of 24, wouldn't have been wouldn't have been released. That information wouldn't have been put out until much later in the season. We're getting everything streamlined because of the 12 episodes. So I have a feeling this Margot story has to come to a head soon. Otherwise, is she our only villain all year? If she's our only villain all year, and then Cross leads into our sequel season, but we'll get a little bit more into that as time.
We got the main story. We got the plot and the subplot. The subplot is our spin-off chick and her espionage husband and Benjamin Bratt being behind all that. And then we have our main plot, which is this chick blowing up London. Now, we're obviously in the mid-season peak where she just blew up half of London like she'd been saying she was going to do.
Could Adrian Cross... And something just struck me, that the first half of this season is obviously going to be, or as the season, around episode 8 probably, this Margot story is going to end in episode 8 or 9. And then our last 2 episodes, just from what we saw last night, maybe Cross is working for the Russians. Maybe he's working for the Russians to try to find Jack Bauer, and they've recently contacted him since Jack came in. Because the Russians obviously have to play a major part in the end here, too. They're either going to kill or capture Bauer at the end of all of this. After the whole day's done and Jack thinks he's gone through everything, the Russians are going to grab him.
And that's okay. I'll give you that. That's what I think, because they had that scene with the Russians, and that's all. Just the one conversation between the president's man.
Yeah, that's not going away. That's not going away. We're gonna get Jack torturing Mark Bordeaux for lying for the president, and we're gonna get
forging a signature or something.
Yeah, we're gonna get some. He's gonna have to deal with some ramifications for that. It's not gonna be like, President, you forgot to sign it. And I don't think the president's dying in next episode, regardless of him giving himself up or not. I don't
think he's gonna give himself up. I think that was. I don't know what the point of that conversation was.
Did you see previews for next week though? I don't want to get too into previews next week. He shows up to give himself up.
I didn't see the previews.
He
but
did.
It makes no sense. She's threatening to blow up the city if he doesn't turn himself in, and she blew up the city anyway, even though he still had time to turn himself in, because she was trying to kill her daughter.
Yep.
You don't turn yourself into that. That doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever.
Remember last week when I said she wasn't that cuckoo? She's pretty cuckoo.
Yeah.
She's crossed the line from normal Lady Stark to goofy goody goo goo. So here we go, back onto the episode.
Yeah, to Stoneheart.
To Stoneheart, to craziness. So Jack hops in the car to head to the hospital to track where Simone is. So we get Mark, a little bit of Mark filling in Heller on the contact information for Margot El-Harazi that she sent to where he can turn himself in. Mark says that she's daring him to discuss terms with him, but you don't.
I'm sorry. A bunch of sirens are going off in Lynn downtown. I can hear them right now.
Yep.
Do you know what they're doing in Lynn today?
What's filming a Johnny Depp movie?
Yeah. They got the whole downtown Monroe Street. We used to work at the production company, and all central at the jam spaces. All that whole area is all sectioned off, blocked off. They're filming the new Whitey Bulger movie down there.
Yep, and they were filming at this place, the Porthole Pub, as well recently.
Oh yeah, the other night. That was pretty cool.
So Mark says that the video is secured and they can't use it to track her location. Jack calls Heller and tells him that they have a lead on Simone and that Margot does not know yet. Heller has to have her put under lock and key. So Jack asks if he can help him deal with the British police, and he says that, listen, Heller, you didn't take care of this. What the hell were those goddamn British... And this is where Jack shows a little bit more emotion here. What the hell were those goddamn British soldiers doing that, Mr. President? You said they wouldn't be there. And the president explains to him that he was dealing, as Joe was mentioning, dealing with some political bullshit, and Davies promised he wouldn't interfere. But Jack says that the MI5 men lost 5 men, and that Davies is going to probably be contacting him soon because of the loss of life and all that sort of stuff. So Heller blows up. Heller calls up Davies and blows the hell up on him. Like, I told you not to do this. You did everything. What the hell? Like, totally screams at him. And explains to him that you never should have put Jack Bauer under surveillance. And Davies is like, listen, he thought he was doing some shady shit. We saw Kate tied up, and he's like, listen, this is why you should never have watched this. You should never have got involved with this. Jack Bauer has his own ways of doing things. And Davies goes, listen, okay, usually I have the utmost respect for you, buddy, but we hear you got Alzheimer's and you're being treated, so how can we really depend on your opinion anymore? This is my country, buddy, and you got Alzheimer's. How can I trust you to trust friggin' Jack Bauer, a guy who almost killed the Russian president a few years ago and has been on the run? Are you an idiot, president? Are you really have dementia? And the president just gets this look on his face like, I'm together, you know, it's just starting, so I'm really not that fucked up. But I can obviously, this is when he starts to have the realization of how other people are going to look at him. How that no matter what he does, and he has and we'll skim over this afterwards so we can just talk about this now. He has a meeting with Bordeaux and Audrey later in the episode where he talks about bringing the vice president in so he can get the process of, when he's done with this whole situation, turning over the office to the vice president, because even if he's okay to do this right now, every single decision he makes from now on is going to be questioned. Every single one, and he was foolish and egocentric to think he could make it through the last term of presidency without the press being all up his ass, and with every leader. And it's a very fair point and very real to the fact of how it would really happen if the press, like if Reagan. Like, Reagan was way worse than this guy, but if the press was the same now as it was in Reagan's time, Reagan would have never been elected a second time. It just would have been, I mean, Bush probably would have been elected. It's not a Democrat-Republican thing. It's just he was so far off the not Alzheimer's, but dementia route but because...
A more fair comparison would have been
FDR.
Wheelchair.
FDR, yeah. No, I hear what you're saying.
Big fat Taft or something.
Yeah, but for whatever it's worth, Reagan was pretty far off at the point when he was elected the second time. His brain was a little bit of mushy cheese at that point. But I agree with you. FDR is a better example of something that happened to him mid-office, not the fact that Reagan was already daffy when he first ran. But the press,
he did a good job hiding it with his speeches and things like that.
He had a great team. He had a great. One of the best teams ever put together, if you really want to get down to it. And
he had that low, soft-spoken, slow cadence thing going on.
There is something to be said about the nature of the way the media handles politicians has changed since the Clinton thing. Since the Clinton thing happened, since that point on, the press they've always called presidents out, but before then, there was this like old boy system where they didn't really report everything that happened, and there was a level of respect put on the office of president, even if it didn't deserve it. It was just like put there. But in recent years, for good or for bad, depending on what your perspective is, I'm not saying which one, I think it's just a fact, it's the presidency of George Bush Jr., Barack Obama, in the second half of Clinton's presidency has been unlike anything in history in the way that the press...
Lincoln...
But not exactly the same way, in the sense of they had to deal with more direct problems of what's going on in the world. I'm talking about in this delusional, press-oriented society. If I'm a member of it, that the things that you ask people are different. People used to hide affairs from the mainstream media.
Nobody reported that Marilyn Manson was getting her brains.
Marilyn Monroe. Yeah, no one. You're thinking of Sons of Anarchy. No one reported that stuff. No one reported at the time he was president the shady shit that Nixon would do. They waited till after, when it all came out. I mean, it was like, it just was a certain level of, I wouldn't say respect, I guess not the best word, a secrecy. And I'd say it's the same thing about professional sports athletes or movie stars. I think all of that was a little bit more protected at certain ages when they were more buddy-buddy.
You're not telling me Wilt Chamberlain and his 20,000 women that he's...
That didn't come out until he wrote a book about it.
Right, and how did 20,000 women not get pregnant by this guy?
So you think it's a lie?
This day and age is not only saying I was pregnated by him, but he raped me and my 3 14-year-old friends.
And here's the kids. Take the DNA test.
Right.
That's this day and age. And before it was, who cares? Bob Marley has 75 kids. He's a hero.
You know, I'm not saying Wilt Chamberlain raped any 14-year-olds.
No. But it's fair to say that someone like Muhammad Ali or Bob Marley were so glorified for what they did as cultural significance that it didn't really, you didn't get that the press didn't report that Bob Marley cheated on every woman he was ever with and had 17,000 different kids. It didn't matter. It didn't matter so much. And same with Muhammad Ali. You know, a lot of people didn't know about his philandering until they saw Will Smith doing it in that horrible movie. So Heller asks, at this point, he yells at Davies and says about the snafu. He says Jack still has a line on Margot, even though this was a big fuck up. But Davies says that he will obey this time and give Jack everything he needs to help. So Simone is taken in the ambulance, and she has internal bleeding and multiple fractures, even though she walks later in the episode. But whatever, everyone heals really quickly in the 24 world. Even our villains can somehow walk easily after they've been hit by buses.
Yeah, 10 minutes after they get hit.
He's like dragging her around. Come on, dude. That's another one of those comedic moments in the episode where we'll get to it, but like when Jack's like, you know, your mom's gonna shoot a bomb here, and she's like, no, she wouldn't do that. Okay, fine, you can stay here, and Jack just walks off. He like drops her on the ground.
Yeah, it is kind of funny that she would be like, no, she wouldn't do that. She wouldn't try to kill me.
Yeah, she didn't just cut off your damn finger, dumbass. Like, are you that delusional?
Cut off your finger. She killed your husband.
And made you watch.
Right.
So they take note that her missing finger.
Sent you to kill your husband's sister and 12-year-old child.
12-year-old child, yeah, and 12-year-old child. And he tells Simone that he was hit by that she was hit by a bus, and that the finger was different. Or he tells Jack, the doctor tells Jack that the finger happened more recently.
I think we skipped the when she's in the ambulance and they get the call from the mother.
Oh yes. I want to say that happens a little bit later, but you're right. I think we did skip that. Right around the point where they think that they have
happens before she gets to the hospital.
Right, they have an advantage over Margot, that they know where Simone is and she doesn't. And the Margot calls Simone's phone when she's in the ambulance, and the EMT guy picks up the phone and goes, "Whoever this is, oh, it's my daughter. Your daughter's been in an accident. She's being rushed to the hospital."
Why point out that they have this advantage if they're just going to take it away less than a minute later?
And it was just one of those really super convenient things, too, that happens in television shows and movies that pisses me off a little bit. Like, oh, she just happened to decide to call right there when she's in the ambulance.
I know I'm working to save your daughter's life, but I had to stop to answer her phone, talk to you.
Exactly. And not to mention, the phone wasn't injured at all in the car accident, that she was just hit by a bus. You know, full on, I mean, like, body hit by a bus. Where'd she keep her phone? Where part of the butt?
It was in an otter case, right?
Okay, yeah, exactly. It was in there with the precious diamonds and stuff. You know, come on. I don't give a shit. So Margot tells Ian after this that Simone has been in an accident and the police are on their way to go there. And Ian asks if she took care of, wants to know, Ian's the little brother, if she took care of Fahar and Yasmin first. Margot says that they need to send a guy to the hospital to see how badly she's hurt and see if the police know anything. So back at CIA, we see Jordan running a program that Navarro told him not to do, and in trying to figure out who's responsible for this whole mess. He says, now, Gavin's acting odd. Jordan goes back to look. There's a guy that walks over that's kind of acting a little bit weird, like, "What are you doing, Jordan? What are you doing?" And this guy was sent by Brat to kind of check on what he was doing, you can tell. And he goes back to get to working on the program. Navarro gets a call, and this is where we get our Adrian Cross moment, and pops it into this little device to protect, you know, to be non-trackable or whatever. And the card tells him that they're running the data, and the other guy, it is Adrian Cross from Open Cell. He tells him that he's not the boss, that he's the middle. This is the important information from that. He tells Navarro that he is the middleman. He's not the boss, and what he needs to do is get rid of Jordan. He needs to kill Jordan because Jordan knows too much, and you can't stop Jordan when he's on fire. So you got to D-up on him and really do some hand checking and get this guy dead. Get this guy dead. And
that scene.
What was that? You missed that scene?
I missed that scene.
And he says that he's the middleman, tells Navarro he's been well paid, so he needs to sort himself quickly. Navarro rings off and stares. So they're
definitely working together. He's definitely in on.
No, he's on in. But what I'm saying was, I don't know if Cross is working with Margot. I don't know if this is a completely different bad situation, that Cross is more so closely associated to this Chinese cover up with the husband thing, because it just seems like.
See, no, this is the subplot. This is the her way back in. Our next season is going to be her freeing Jack from the Russians.
Okay, fair enough. I guess I'm just wondering where Adrian fits into this mix. What
Jail.
is he associated to the Russians? Jail.
No, he's like you said, he's the anonymous organization, the Free Cell or whatever the hell they are.
But he said he's the middleman for someone else in this scene. So who is he working for is the question here.
Right. Why did they set him up to set up the husband?
Right, exactly. Is he working with the Chinese government? Is he working with a rogue organization of our government? Is he working with the Prime Minister, who Kate was on to some hinky stuff in England, so she needed to be stopped somehow? Is he with Margot? And it's just, I'm not aware, it's something.
At this point, 5 episodes in, 6 episodes in, it's going to be difficult to explain away, all of a sudden it's the Prime Minister involved.
Right. So
we've had mention of the Chinese, we've had mention of the Russians. To all of a sudden try to tie it all to him is going to seem kind of cheap and fake.
I agree with you. That's why as much as I think it's BS, it would make more sense to have him either be a part of Margot or have him be a part of the Russians. One of those two, because even the China thing has been sort of in the back burner a little bit. So it seems like it would make more sense. But then it needs to be something associated with Chloe and something almost to deal with that has nothing to do with Jack. Because if he's the contact for Benjamin Bratt, who did some shady shit before, that has nothing to do with Jack Bauer.
No, I think it's just going to be all about money for them. For Benjamin Bratt, who's just a mid-level CIA guy who wants more money, and Adrian Cross, who is corrupting his free information kind of WikiLeaks organization, hacker organization that's all about this liberal free media bullshit and free government and open information. And I think it's going to become about money for him. Yeah, sure, he was a middleman for the information and he made his money, but ultimately it's going to come down to the other bit of drama we're going to see is the fact that there seemed to be this connection between Chloe and Adrian to begin with. That they kind of loved each other, or boyfriend and girlfriend, or the mother and father to all those young kid hackers that were in this group.
Oh my God, Joe! Do you want to hear something weird? The comment tracker's working. We have a comment from Steve 5 and the Dude. Let's check it out. Let's see if it can go on the air. You can actually put the comment up on the air, up on the screen. It didn't really work, but there it goes. Oh wait, no, it did work. We live in an age of instant media. It all started with OJ. Yes, thank you, dude. And that is true. Maybe it did start with OJ. OJ was a better example than Clinton because it started in the sense of before the OJ trial, I don't think any trial or anything was that ridiculous. Maybe the Iran-Contra hearing. The Iran-Contra hearing was pretty intense as well in the sense of just like nonstop media objectification of something. So good point, Stevie. I'm sorry to call you Stevie. I know you hate that.
Dude.
The dude.
Yeah, so I think that it will be about that, and the other point of drama will be that it'll come down to Chloe taking out Adrian or something like that to save Jack or to save Kate. That's I think, and ultimately that ends up being she's going to find out that Adrian was behind her getting captured by the CIA, by Navarro or whoever.
I think it's safe to say I think you're right about that because I think as much as Kate is a big character, some of the other characters are big, the two stars of 24 leading into this and going out of this are going to be Chloe and Jack.
Right, so I think it's going to be Chloe saving Kate's life, and then Kate's next season working with Chloe to free Jack from the Russians who are going to step in at the end of the season, which will be our cliffhanger.
Should be interesting. I'm wondering, and I kind of hope so. At episode 7 here, I do hope there's more 24 after this because I've enjoyed this enough to the point where I would like more, and there's enough good stuff that I'd like to see what they could do with a second story, or if they were so burnt, or if this was all that they had.
I think it's a good thing that they did 12 episodes only, and I think if they do bring it back for another season, I think they'll keep it at 12 episodes.
No, I agree.
Story along. It won't let you lose viewers. It's too hard to make it about so many things. When you do that, you have to bring in his daughter and make her all of a sudden she's CIA too.
She already was. I have a feeling if they do another season, CIA is not going to be. They're going to go back to CTU somehow. Or they're going to go back to America and go back to CTU. Because I think if anyone's complaining about anything this season, it's that it's set in it's set in England, and people are like, 24 should be set in the United States somewhere for a terrorist threat. But I get why they're doing it, because it made more sense for Jack to not be back in the United States, that Jack was tromping around Europe. So it made more sense for the story that if he's a fugitive from the United States, he wouldn't actually be in the United States. So Davey Navarro rings and stares at Jordan's workstation after this all happened. Jack and Kate jog into the ER, and they find a UK cop waiting on them that says Davey sent her and she is there to help do anything she can to support them. Helen says that Simone was chased by the little girl, and said that Simone killed the mother, and that the police found the body and confirmed this. Kate says, I'm going to go talk to the little girl. You go see if you can get anything from Simone. So the doctor comes out and says she's been unconscious, but she's coming around. Jack says he has to talk to her before she goes in the scan. Doctor says, this is impossible, Jack. And Jack says, listen, do you realize the lives that are in need for this little whore? I don't give a shit about this little chick's life. We need to find out what's going on. We need to get her stable, pump her with drugs, wake her ass up, and I need to talk to her. This is something he said in past seasons of 24 with some people, too, where there's a guy in a hospital bed ready to die if they don't get an operation, and he's like, no. Pump her full of drugs, and I'm going to torture her. So our bad guy from
It's like a Friday night, dude.
It's true. Kareem shows up at the hospital and lurks around, and no one notices him. Apparently, these police aren't good at their job. They just let some random guy, terrorist-looking guy with a gun, walk in the front door. And he heads into the linen office, and he rifles through some hospital uniforms, and he changes into one to kind of blend in. And Kate said,
that's hilarious to me.
Yeah, it's like, ridiculous.
That's just funny.
Yeah, we don't even have to. It's fucking ridiculous. Kate goes to a vending machine, gets some ginger beer, which I assume is just ginger ale. No,
it's strong ginger.
Is it strong? Is
it
like
ginger beer is like it's like the strongest ginger ale times 10 you've ever had. It's pretty powerful stuff.
It's making me thirsty right now. And
it takes a little bit of getting used to, but if you like that kind of ginger burn, it's for you.
Is it so non-alcoholic, obviously, because she's
not alcoholic.
Kid. Yeah, I guess. So Kate
put some whiskey in it or something.
So you could have like a ginger beer in whiskey, or ginger beer and rum or something.
Ginger and Jack, yeah, something like that. Ginger beer is very, very I can't stress how strong it is. Okay,
interesting. So it's kind of like the Altoids of ginger ale.
It's curiously stronger.
It's curiously strong. Good. I like that. So she introduces her, Kate introduces herself to the little girl and asks if she can talk. Yeah, Yasmin asks if she's American, and she tells her that she's sorry, and Kate says, I'm sorry about what your mom happened. Yasmin says it was Aunt Simone that did it. She says she was married to Naveed, and she said she heard shouting downstairs, and her mom said that she was going to call the police, that Simone was saying, get out of town, get out of town. And she says she came downstairs, saw her mom covered in blood, and Kate rubs her back and starts comforting her a little bit, and you start to feel bad for this little girl. And she asks Simone if Simone did anything, and she says Simone told her mom to get the hell out of London. I said that before. And she said she was trying to protect her from her mother, Margot. And Yasmin says she never met Margot. Kate thanks her for telling her that, and Yasmin asks what's going to happen to Simone. Yasmin says, and looks really coldly, I hope she dies. And we mentioned that before. Kate calls Jack and says that they're trying to Jack says they're trying to wake Simone. Kate tells him that Simone was looking to get them out of town, that maybe Simone would be open for Ratitudes. And I thought this was another one of those way too convenient moments. Right as Kate's talking on the phone, walking by, the EMT bad guy or that Margot sent just happens to be right behind her, listening to this, like, ha ha ha! I just happened to be in the right place at the right time to get that information. It's like that Chris Farley or that moment in I forget what I think it's like Chris Farley says it or in Wayne's World or something. Thank God we were here at this exact moment at this exact time to
pick up the satellite phone call from Mr. Big.
Yeah, thank God we're right here. It was sort of that moment where he just happens to be there at the right exact time to hear Kate talking to Jack, and she calls calls Margot, and Margot tells him to find exactly where she is in the building, and she needs to be stopped. Margot tells Ian to get everyone packed up, that they have to get out of there because Simone might end up giving them up. Ian says Margot doesn't have to do this to Simone, and she says, yes, move the drone within range of the hospital.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that she's moving the drone in range of the hospital. Now she's going to fire at a room in the hospital to kill Simone. That makes absolutely zero sense on so many levels. You're going to waste a missile. I know you have five more drones, but you're wasting a missile. You're shooting at a hospital. You say you don't want innocent people to die, but you're shooting at a hospital, which is probably the biggest trauma that's happened since The Dark Knight, when the Joker blows up the hospital. That's who blows up the hospital. You're putting yourself in line with the fucking Joker from The Dark Knight. Why so serious, Margot?
And the missile that hit the hospital, sure, caused quite a bit of damage to the hospital, but when you saw the whole building, there was quite a bit of building still standing. How would you even know that you hit the right part of the building? Okay, the building's targeted, but you don't know if you're hitting the emergency room, the operating room, the psych units.
Why so stupid? And Steve, the dude would like to add, ginger beer and rum is dark and stormy. Oh, it's called a dark and stormy. Interesting. I'm gonna have to try that next time I go out. Did you think bars just carry ginger beer? You think that's a common?
Not too many. No, you'll probably have to bring your own ginger beer.
Oh, interesting. Very interesting stuff. So, oh wait, my pictures. There we go. I'm trying to put the comments up on screen. I don't know if it's actually working. We'll have to see.
I don't see them, but it just might not show them to me.
Yeah, and I can't see them either. There's a way that you click on them. I think it's one of those things that I'd probably have to wait like 5 minutes, and then eventually the comment would come up on the screen or something. We'll have to test all that stuff out in the off season so we can get things up and rolling a little bit more smooth, or see what we can do with Google Hangouts a little bit more. So at the CIA, Jordan is asked to step into Navarro's office, and he goes in, and Navarro's trying to get all neat. He's getting out of his villain shirt and getting back into his good outfit, and he tells Jordan that you've been such a good soldier, I'm sending you on the road. I'm sending you out into the field because our other guy that we had at the beginning of the season, I'm blanking on his name, isn't back to normal yet. He's too injured, so you're our man. You're the guy. And we're going to send, even though you're a computer analyst and you've never been in the field before, and it makes completely no sense, you're going out, and we have an office full of soldiers and foot soldiers around here that are all used to going out in the field. You, in fact, computer hacker guy that we have working at the CIA, you're going out in the field to make a pickup. And Jordan doesn't question this, even though he's head deep and it's his job to question things. He's just like, thanks, boss. He's just so excited about it.
Maybe he's been doing that. I mean, this is only 5 hours of his life that we see.
Very true.
So
very true.
He does do.
Very true. And maybe he's been asking for more responsibilities. We don't know if he's been pandering to the boss for new responsibilities. So we see Davies making the announcement on the news that about security measures being to the terror threat. Now, this is where we get our conversation about Heller and Audrey in Bordeaux talking about how Heller thinks that he needs to give up the presidency when this is all done and go back to D.C. That again, to reiterate what we said before, that he feels like this is his ego working. This is your ego fucking with you here. We're thinking that he wants to run the course of the presidency and leave on his own terms. When you're in this situation, as we were talking about a bunch earlier, he has no hope. He has no hope. Once the press gets a hold of this, he's gonna get impeached. So he might as well leave and do one last thing, so that at least in the history books it says that he gave up his presidency, not he was taken out of his presidency. I'm sure he's thinking that.
You do that so you don't get thrown out.
Right. Isn't it better? Isn't it better to be the break-upper than the break-uppy? It's always better to be the break-upper. Even if you regret it after the fact and it's a hard thing to rip off that Band-Aid, it's better to be the ripper than to feel the burn after the fact. It's just a fact. It's just a fact. The initial rip hurts a lot less than the burn afterwards. So Jack looks at Simone's severed finger and he asks her if she can hear him. Can you hear me? He asks what she knows about Yasmin, and he says that they talked to Yasmin. Simone says that she knows him from tailing him earlier in the episode. She recognizes him. Jack says he wants her to think of all the innocent people that the mom's putting at risk, and he begs her to stop it. And this is when Simone doesn't. This is where Margot should know her daughter better and not have to blow her up. She says directly, and I guess the son knows the daughter better than she does. Just says, "Listen, Jack Bauer." She basically spits in his face. Goes, "Listen, buddy. Just because I showed mercy on two innocent people, on my sister-in-law and her daughter, does not mean I'm going to friggin' tell you shit, you American scumbag."
Yeah, you still killed my daddy or my stepdaddy. I'm not sure if it's.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if she's referred to her dead husband as these kids' father.
Yeah. No. And he says the mother did this, and your mother did this, and he pokes her severed finger. He gets his finger and touches her little pinky and pushes it and causes her all this pain. Jack Bauer is so good at torture now. He's such an expert torturer. He doesn't even have to use his whole body. He doesn't even have to say anything. He just goes with the one finger you are tortured, Bauer. So Jack presses it. He keeps pushing down on her finger until she passes out. And Kate's watching all this from outside the room. She watches Jack seriously push this girl in pain until she passes out from the pain. And as something that Jack said to people in the past, Jack said this to Tony once in an earlier season when Tony was losing control over what happened to Michelle, and he says to him, "You're losing your mark. You're losing her." And Jack is trying to be too emotional. Jack says that Simone wasn't going to talk anyway. He talks about how Yasmin said she was traumatized, and this is where he says this thing that Jack's never said this before. I mean, in 8.5 seasons of 24, I've never heard him say the words that he's about to say. He just turns to her and she's like, "Listen, you almost lost Simone. She's not going to help you like this." And he just turns and goes, he doesn't say fucking, but he just basically should have said fucking. If this was on HBO, he would have said fucking. "I fucking hate these people." And it was just you felt it. You felt that Jack finally is looking at all this. And if any character growth we've had, it's in Jack Bauer, and it's from where we've seen him before. Everything horrible that's happened to Jack Bauer in his life is because of fighting terrorism. And because of fighting terrorism and being so good at his job, he's lost his wife, he lost his best friend, he lost his job, he lost his life, he lost his daughter. I mean, she's alive, but he can't have her. Lost his grandson or daughter, I forget which one it was. Lost his whole life because of terrorism, because of fighting the good fight. And he's sick of it, and he doesn't want to take it anymore. If anything, this leads to Joe's moderate credence, which he's shifted now to agreeing that Jack's probably going to be captured, not killed. But if anything, this leads more credence to Joe's speculation that Jack dies at the end of all of this, that he's coming to the ultimate realization that he is done with all of this.
Just think of the title, Live Another Day. It says he's going to, that all but says I'm dead at the end of this episode.
It could. It does. It absolutely does. And okay, so Jack says Simone wasn't going to talk anyway. He talks about Yasmin, and this is where they spot the bad guy, and they chase after him. And Helen and Kate split off. Helen is our British security agent, and they split up to pursue him. They find him in the ER. They chase him down. When the cop shoots him, as Jack shouts, "Damn it!" And another one of these 24 things that happens all the time. We're about to get the guy that might be able to help, and someone kills him that shouldn't kill him. He's dead, but they see that he texts Margot Simone's location, and she texts back that he has 8 minutes to get the hell out. Jack tells them all, "Margot's gonna blow up the hospital. Everyone get the hell out." And he goes and they start to get everyone out of the hospital as quickly as possible as Margot is sending the drone to take out Simone. And as we see the visual of the drone pulling up right next to the hospital tower, that's pretty funny. All this drone stuff that we deal with at the end here, as I'm gonna yada yada stuff through a little bit here at the end, is all pretty hilarious, the way the visuals look with the drone following the car, the drone outside the hospital. It's just, it looks silly. It kind of looked, but I mean, not silly in the way that
it looked low budget is what it looked.
It did.
Almost looked A-teamish.
Yeah, it did. It definitely looked like, unlike this past episode, we're not going to talk too much about because I don't want to throw out any spoilers. Unlike this past episode of Game of Thrones, which was done on a television budget, that could, and I know Game of Thrones does not like to be compared to Lord of the Rings, but the battle that looked just as good in its own way as the Battle of Helm's Deep. I'm sorry, it did. And one was a big movie, and one was an episode of a TV series, and it, like, visually looked great. 24 doesn't have that kind of money. 24 cannot put.
It showed with some of these explosions.
It did. It looked really CG. It looked a little George Lucas at times. We got a couple of Lucas-ish type stuff. Side note, Joe, just quick side note, and just gonna say it and go. The giants in this past episode, that was actually a real person in makeup. That wasn't CG. It was a ex-college, almost NBA star that's like 7'6" that they dressed up in makeup, and then they had a little extra CG. But
the
giant,
because he was 15 feet tall.
yeah, but the reason why that looks so cool is because that was actually practical. You know, it was actually a practical effects, and that makes all the difference when you watch something like 24. I think it would have even worked better if they did the little mini effects, if they did the plane, you know, like the mini plane, the
models.
old, yeah, the model stuff, and just done CG with the model stuff, because it did look a little silly at times with the drones.
I can't get over that second missile strike when they shoot at the car.
Well, we'll get to that. We'll get to that in a second. But yeah, we talked a lot about that. It was silly. That was the silliest moment of the episode, or there's a couple of silly moments. And Kate goes running off, and she says she'll be back as they start to struggle to get all the people out of the hospital. Jack hits the fire alarm and says that Margot's sending a drone to take out Simone, and this gets all the people out.
I really gotta say it's rather ridiculous too. Fire alarms go off at my hospital all the time. It happens. Sometimes patients pull them. Sometimes there's a malfunction in the system. Sometimes it's just a fire drill.
Yep. Actually, funny story. I was at my work, and I'm an entertainer, and I was at a location to entertain a bunch of seniors, and literally right when I sat down to entertain, the fire alarm went on, and they said that this happens like weekly there. It's a normal thing. And no one panicked. Everyone was so calm. They had to like get everybody to move. Everyone's like,
I ain't going anywhere. Like,
Yeah.
and that's the way it is. Even in a hospital, you don't evacuate because the fire alarm goes off. Nobody starts running out of the building.
And the person
Everybody says, "Okay, where's the fire? Go put it out."
Yeah, and instead it turns into like the part of an airplane when they announce that there's no coffee, and everyone's like screaming, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. And I was watching this with Stephanie, and Steph goes, what about, like, is that some, like, you know, terminally ill patients that are just sprinting out? And it's like, right. Doctor,
it was very, that part was extremely unrealistic. It's like, okay, so even if Jack is yelling in that one section of the hospital, everybody out, there's going to be a bomb or something, it's not going to spread through the rest of the hospital that quickly. And even if they announce it, there's a lot that has to go into getting these patients out of the building.
It was a little bit of goofiness here. The second half of this episode, the first half is an interesting lead up, and I enjoyed the second half. But
again, of course, it was all action. It was good stuff.
We mentioned this a lot, but you need to Independence Day turn off your brain during a 24 episode when they get into the crazy action. It's because I think the depth of 24, again, we mentioned this a lot, comes from Jack Bauer and comes from everything he's been through, and Kiefer's amazing acting as Jack Bauer, which I think is top notch this season. And the writing's good this season for him. You see that real growth, negative growth, and positive growth for his character, for what he's been through. But story-wise, action-wise, 24 is, again, we mentioned this earlier, is as Expendables, Rambo as you could possibly can get. It's Tango and Cash. It's all of that. It's the silliness, and it's either you embrace the silliness or... That's why this show is definitely not for everybody, in the sense if you want somebody that asks way too many questions about, hey, how's that happen? How's that happen?
That's usually me.
But you don't do it to the extent of, because you can like shut off your brain for action movies. There's some people that are like, can't do that and can't watch something like this. They just roll their eyes so much that it goes back in the head and they have a brain hemorrhage from eye roll, and they can't watch a show like this because
that's because I can do it for a movie much easier because I know I'm invested for 2 hours. That's
right.
it.
If we weren't
talking about a series like this, or like Blacklist or Revolution, where it's just totally, I can't wrap my brain around too many of these little things.
Now, interesting question before we move on. If we weren't doing recaps on this, would you finish the season of 24?
If we weren't doing recaps, I wouldn't have started the season.
Wouldn't have started. You never. Okay, that's basically the question. If we weren't doing recaps and You probably never would have watched this because you probably
Right.
never would have
I
watched.
watched the first season, parts of the first season, and I kind of gave up on it then. I wouldn't have watched it, but say like if you were like, okay, we did the first few recaps,
No,
I
or
don't
if I
really
was
have
like,
time to do
listen,
it.
Joe, Catelyn Stark's on the show. You should watch it because Catelyn Stark's fucking awesome. Like that's what I was saying to the dude. I was like, 24 might not be your thing, but Catelyn Stark's on it.
Yep,
Watch the
that's
damn
what. And
show.
ultimately, when I saw that, I was more into watching it. And then, if we stopped doing this right now, I would
Yeah,
finish the
if the
season.
world ended, if I died tomorrow and you weren't grieving over, I mean like if I died without grieving, and I was like, Joe, I got to stop doing post episode recaps today. Would you watch the end of the season at this
I'd
point?
watch the end of the season. Yeah.
Okay. So Jack grabs Simone and tells her, we talked about this a second ago, tells her that her mom's targeting her with a drone. She says she wouldn't do that. And Jack just drops her on the floor. Just drops her on the floor. And she just sits up, fine. And again, Joe works in the medical field. And I know you don't deal with people with broken bones. I don't want to get into what you do, but come on, man. She just got hit by a bus. She can't just stand up.
If her legs aren't broken, then she can walk. If her
But what
hips
if her
aren't
ribs
broken,
are broken? What about her ribs?
that just hurts. If your
Oh.
lungs aren't popped, it just hurts a whole lot. There's nothing you can do about ribs. If her arms are broken, she can still walk, but she could have, internal bleeding that's getting worse,
Yeah, she
spinal
got hit
injuries
by
that
a
are getting
bus.
worse.
She got hit by a. Did you see the same bus that hit her? Like she's not survived. I mean, she's not surviving that. Okay, she survived that. If she survived that, her legs have to be broken. She got lifted up off the. Whatever. I'm shutting off my brain.
Well, and that's just it. When I saw the replay of her getting hit by a bus, I thought to myself, that's kind of strange. It looked like she started flying away from the bus just before the bus actually hit
And
her.
it also looked like the bus hit her in her face, and she seems to have her pretty face is intact.
Yeah, no, she was definitely flat up against the front.
Yeah, and she was like, yeah, and her face is just all like she's got no marks on her face. She's just like, hey, look how
I can't wait till if they would have just given her that perfect bandage that just goes around the crown of her head with her hair perfectly underneath it.
God damn, Sansa
Love her
Stark.
hair.
God damn that Sansa Stark. Fuck her. So he just drops her on the floor and he says, look outside. Come on. Do you really think your mother wouldn't do this? And she begs him not to leave her, and he picks her up and he pulls her. He like literally drags her around across the floor. Jack goes after Yasmin, but she's already gone. And at this point, I gotta admit, I thought Yasmin was going to be killing Simone by the end of the episode. I thought we were gonna get a moment of Yasmin like stealing a gun or grabbing a scalpel or something like that and sneaking up behind Simone and like cutting her throat or something. Like again, this is something that happens in 24 that like when we couldn't find the little girl for a second, I was convinced the little girl was gonna show up behind her and something like that and stab her. But that didn't happen. She can't find her, and she calls out for the girl. They find her hiding beside a bed. She says she'll take care of her, and she pulls her along. So then we go back over to Ian and Margot with the hospital in range. They watch a video feed, and this is another one of those things that Rob Cesternino pointed this out, and it's very true. Margot, not on a clear picture, on a weird thing where you can barely see everybody.
Them.
That's them. Points at the thing and points them out. Like knows it's them. How do you know it's them? God, there's like hundreds of people, almost 1,000 people scurrying out of this hospital. You point out them.
How much contact has she had with Jack Bauer? And
Zero.
Kate knows what they look like, but she does know what her daughter looks like, and
not on like a. Like it wasn't a clear picture though. It was like a weird sort of like
it's a satellite. It was a satellite feed.
Photo, yeah. Like when you're playing Batman Arkham City or Arkham Asylum and you use the Batman vision and you see things from that way, it's like the Batman vision. Like you can't point out, you don't know what person that is. But anyways, so she knew it was her daughter. They spot Simone with Jack and they tell him to fire again. This is where we get the combination of our most ridiculous things. That was one of my most ridiculous things. This is when we get what Joe's been talking about. She tells them to fire another drone. And it like hits the car behind them, and they just keep going.
I don't even think it was the car behind him. It was almost as though, like, as they started moving, it hit the spot their trunk was in, and the trunk was where they were actually. Like, they moved forward 5 feet, and the missile hit the parking space they were in, and the 2 cars next to them flew up in the air, but they just drove away.
And another thing, like and I mentioned this at the beginning of the show, when they blew up when they did the first drone strike, the test, it blew up like each explosion of these drones has been significantly different. Like
Yeah, that house was completely demolished, but
completely
only a portion of this building and 2 cars.
Right, exactly. And then only a portion of the building, and then the hospital. It wasn't the whole hospital. It was only that wing of the hospital.
Yeah.
And then when it was like there's no consistency to how much damage these missiles can cause, and they're not varying degree missiles. I'm sorry, that doesn't exist, or that does exist.
It does kind of exist, but they're not gonna. There's only 4 missiles. I think they were all the same missile.
They were all the same missile. I'm saying it doesn't exist in television world. In reality, it does, but in television world, that's not going to happen. They're not going to fire different size missiles here, and they're just not going to do that. And so he speeds away in the blood and the smoke and the chaos of the hospital. Simone looks back and she can see the wreckage. Margot tells Ian to stay on them and take the shot when he can. And here's where we get a car chase of a
drone in a car through London.
Of the first hour that this guy is operating the drone. This isn't what's his name, and Blake, or her husband there, Naveed. This is the guy that just learned how to do this too, and he's like,
by watching the husband do it, not by doing it with him or having him tutor him, by just watching from across the room.
This guy is a mimic. He's like got the mimic hero power. He must be like that character in Heroes that can watch anybody and then recreate what they can do, because exactly he learned this all from watching.
But we are in the video game age, and he is the son of a terrorist, so maybe they had him trained for 9/11 too, or something.
Now, why the hell was Naveed even necessary? Did he just get a job because Simone's like, give my husband
to help put Simone against Margot?
Oh, fair enough.
To help move that along and have her help Jack.
I mean in the reality of like the plan, if we were looking things from the bad guy standpoint, if Ian's this good and can pick things up this quickly, can't he just watch a video on YouTube on how to run drones or something? You know, like, does he really need
a soldier who knows and have him teach you?
Exactly. Do we really need Naveed in the whole exchange at all? Because you're right. The reason why we need him is to get Simone at odds with Margot. But in the reality of this bad guy's plan, we don't need Naveed. He was an unnecessary addition to the plan. Obviously, he knew that his wife worked for the mother and would disappear for months at a time, so she could have just disappeared, and he could have been completely out of the loop. It just seems to me Naveed was unnecessary, except for the reasons why you just said. So Jack hustles through the traffic as Ian tries to get behind him and get a good shot. He speeds recklessly as Ian fires again and takes out the side of a building, barely missing them. And he curses. And Ian says they have to bring it down to 20,000 feet.
The fun thing about these missiles too is that they're like when they target another aircraft or something like that, aren't they like radar controlled, heat seeking, all this like to make sure they hit their target? But nope, it won't lock onto. It'll lock onto the car, but it won't take a little bit of a turn to finally hit the car.
Remember when we were kids and we'd have that like battle of like, I have a gun, well I have a sword, well I have a force field for your sword. It looks like Jack Bauer has like a lock-free like force field. Like if he's better than Val Kilmer in Top Gun, where he's like Iceman cannot be, no one can lock a missile on Iceman. It just can't happen. And it's the same thing with Jack Bauer here. I guess he just has magic powers that allows them to a locked fight. And that's the thing. Each time that Ian's made the shot, we got to say Ian did a good job at locking the shot. It wasn't like, oh, I'm just in range. I'm got him lined up in my crosshairs. It was like we got the verification beep 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 that it's been a lock shot. So that means, as Joe was saying, it's heat-seeking missiles at that point, essentially. That, I mean, I'm simplifying it by saying
laser guided. The reason why it's called a lock is because it locks on the target.
It won't miss, and not just because Jack Bauer decides to speed a little faster than the speed limit.
Turn to the right real quick.
It's not a GPS that figures in like speed. It's like if you go at this speed, it's a lock. No, it's a lock on the fucking thing. I'm sorry, that was a little ridiculous too. But Ian says they need to bring it down to 20,000 feet because that's how you can get perfect lock. So I guess that's a thing now. I guess it was too high in the air. Even though, wait a second, they need to get it down to 20,000 feet. Even though we saw a shot earlier with the drone plane in the same shot as the hospital. So this hospital's really big. This hospital's like a 15,000 foot hospital peak in England. This is the biggest. This is like the national treasure. It's one of the natural wonders of the world.
Hospital St. St. Everest.
Yes, St. Everest. Yeah, Hospital St. Everest here. That's at the same height as higher than 20,000. But I know, I mean, it's a perspective thing. But still, the way they made it look like was that the drone was like
looked like it was 20,000 feet in the air.
Yeah, it didn't look like it was less. It didn't look like it was more than 20,000 feet.
Right, and if it did, that hospital was freaking huge then.
Yeah. But either way, the hospital was pretty fucking huge. So they need to bring it down to get the last, because they only have one missile left. So Jack gets stuck in traffic and he curses and he backs up and he says that they have to switch cars and he hops out of the car and drags Simone along. And I felt so bad. I hate to say it, I felt so bad for Simone in this scene because she just kept getting dragged. And I'm like, oh, poor girl. She's just going to die. And Jack basically does something that we've seen before in 24. I believe it's in season 3, maybe season 4. We see one of the bad guys doing this as Jack's tracking him. So I don't know if this was intentional on the 24 creators' standpoint to show that Jack learned something from one of the people he was tracking in previous seasons, but I thought if they didn't mean to do that, it played like that, and I thought that was really cool that they did that because Jack basically did the same thing that he saw someone else do for him, hopping into different cars, moving lanes, going through. But of course, Margot has the evil eye of the Tullys and can kind of watch everything he's doing and knows that it's him. And Jack goes, "Oh, it's a tunnel. Pull in the tunnel." They pull in the tunnel, and Jack pulls his gun, and they steal another car, and Jack puts a brick on the wheel of the car he was driving and kind of sends it out, and Ian fires the missile and blows up the car. But of course, Margot is not your normal villain, and she has...
He says it's them, and she says, fire!
Fire, yes. And they fire it, and then Margot, again, has second sight or whatever, and she's like, wait a minute.
Rewind the tape.
Rewind the tape. The infrared's empty. They're not in there. They've lost...
So not only... They had the good sense to not only watch the satellite video feed, but to record it. So they had, it for posterity.
Steve says Stark vision. Yeah, she has the Stark vision. She could. She's warged. She warged into a bird that was flying by, and she saw it. And set drones on stun. Yeah, exactly. They put the set drones on stun setting in it. Number 1, put set drones on stun. And so they lost Simone at 5:48. So Jordan heads out for the drop that we heard about from Benjamin Bratt earlier. He walks up the docks and looks for the right vessel. He steps aboard, looks at the padlocked door in confusion. He looks around, and then the worst hitman in the world, literally, not joking around here, the worst hitman on the planet, shoots him in the shoulder, and he falls into the water. And does the shooter go and look for him? Does he want to verify that this guy's dead after he shot him? Yes, in the shoulder, which is such a fatal point. I know. I mean, I don't want to get shot in the shoulder, but I know.
Shot in the anything.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to be shot in the anything. But fair to say, it's gonna hurt like a son of a bitch. But if I was shot in the shoulder, or if I shot somebody in the shoulder, I would figure that they weren't dead. I'm guess that's just something. Especially if I'm a hitman and I've done this before, but whatever. The shooter comes to check on him, looks at him in the water, but doesn't see anything, and he goes off. So at this point, we see Mark sneaking off to meet the deputy minister of Russia. The deputy minister tells him that he has to hand over Jack Bauer immediately, and Mark says, "Well, well, the president got Jack Bauer to help out on the. Sorry, boss. Sorry, I'm making this guy Baba Booey. It's just the voice I hear.
It was pretty ridiculous, the fact that he put himself in this position, and then he makes it worse by giving this guy any kind of credence to go talk to him.
Yeah,
but could have just maybe played it off like, "Sir, you signed the paper. You signed it the other."
I mean, that's the best way to play it, but I don't think he could even do that because I don't think Audrey would let him get away with that because I think Audrey knows Heller well enough to be like, he wouldn't do that.
I guess if they analyze the signature, it might come up as not his.
Yeah, he says that Jack served his purpose and that anyways. So the DMs, the deputy minister basically calls Bordeaux out and goes, "Listen, the president didn't sign this. You forged this, and this is why you don't want the president to know." And he goes, "Just because we know Jack's past with your wife. That's why you want to do this." And he also says forging Heller's signatures is treason, and Mark cannot intimidate him because Jack is out in the field and he needs to get his hands on him, and they're going to get Jack Bauer if they want to get Jack Bauer. He says once Jack has served his purpose, he can have him. The guy says that for his sake, it better be sooner than later, and he will expect his call. So Bordeaux is just getting deeper and deeper here.
Yep.
Deeper and deeper to the point of treason.
President now.
Yeah, you need exactly. You need to tell your parents now, before it's too late.
I mean, he's screwed either way. What he did is unforgivable. It's treason. It's going to go to jail maybe, but the degree to which the amount of time you want to spend in prison, or the amount of president penis you want to have down your throat and up your ass, depends on how quick you come out with this. When it comes down to it, if you're breaking the law on something like this, it's better to admit it than be found out. It's always better. You'll always get a less of punishment if you're the one that. The other option would have been to kill this guy too. Yeah. So Heller makes a call to Jack. He says that he's been seeing the event at the hospital and it's horrible. Jack says they're heading to CIA with Simone and they're going to try to keep her alive and ask her questions. He asks if there's a realistic chance that they're going to find Margot before the deadline. And Jack basically says that they're going to try their hardest, but they are running out of time. Heller says that he needs to see him, and he'll explain once he gets there. Jack tells Kate to drop him off and take Simone to the CIA. So the guy that's the Bordeaux's main little assistant comes in to see Heller and asks him and gives him the contact information for Margot and basically gives him Margot's Skype number and how to contact Margot. And he got through the back channels. Okay, if you can get Margot's Skype number through the back channels, they should be able to track the find computer. Her. Yeah. Why they even have Jack Bauer? Again, I'm stealing this for a little bit from Rob Sestonito's show. Signal has to be able to find their computer, and if that signal can find their computer, even through whatever servers and bouncing off of this and that, they should be able to find where that signal's going. A lot of bullshit here, and he also knows about the jacket that the president asked for. Heller tells him that Mark is not to know about any of this. He refuses to tell anybody his plans. Heller dials the number, and he changes his jacket, puts on this other jacket, and we see Jack driving and heading towards there. We see Ian packing, Margot looking at the photos of her daughter, sadly. And then we also, in this moment, see Jordan crawling up out of the water. Surprise, surprise, he's not dead. And one step in great pain as he looks at the wound he has. Margot's phone rings. She takes the call, and it is Heller. They greet each other. Dressed up nice. He's in a new suit, like the suit he has. And they have like a really interesting supervillain conversation. President Heller. Did you say supervillain slash? Yeah, supervillain villain president conversation. President Heller. Margot El-Harazi. Yeah, more Texan. Well, Margot El-Harazi. Margot El-Harazi. I'm all Australian over here. Yeah, I've been waiting to meet you for a long time. And she takes the call, and they greet each other with disdain. She says she didn't think he was man enough to make the call. He says he still has time to turn himself over, and he says that if he can trust her to keep her word, if he really does give himself in. Margot says if what he says is true and he really does surrender under her terms, no one else will die. She says she'll be waiting for his decision. And Heller says, with a big smile on his face, I've made my decision already. Beep, beep, beepity. Well, she says, you wouldn't have called me unless you made your decision. Right. And he says, well, as you said, I've already made my decision. So I guess two things here. Do you think she's being forthright? Do you think if he really gives herself up, she won't file the missiles? Oh, no, you know what he's going to do? He is going to give himself up, but he's going to be strapped with a suicide bomb. Ah, that's a good idea. That could connect to why he needs the jacket. That makes a lot of sense. Just to go a little bit into previews for next week, we actually did see previews for next week, the president showing up at Wembley Stadium waiting for that's the place that Margot has asked him to meet, and he's sitting there with it's not to meet him, it's probably to drone strike it. Empty Wembley Stadium. Right. She's gonna destroy what's a symbol of Britain and freedom or tennis or whatever, and kill him at the same time.
But for you, Joe, what an episode of 24 Live Another Day. We had a lot of problems, but in a lot of ways was the most fun episode we've had in so far. This was a shut your brain off, not a lot of political intrigue, not a lot of trying to be deeper than it is. We had straight out action movie this episode. Yeah, the show could use a bigger budget to create. We could use a bigger boat to create a couple of better special effects in certain moments. But for the most part, I think they did with what they could do well, and they made it ridiculous enough that it was entertaining enough. And I'm looking forward to next week. I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes, and I'm feeling that the tension and the action just could be amped up for our last 5 episodes here.
Sure.
So everybody, thank you for tuning into this week's post-episode recap of 24 Live Another Day, episode 7 of season 9. And we will be back next week to talk more 24, and we'll also be back this coming Sunday to talk about the season finale of Game of Thrones. Also, I just posted up on the YouTube page and on the website, issuesprogram.com, a photo journal, a little slideshow that Joe put together from Pop Culture Expo that has like most if not all of the cosplays or some of the best cosplays from the event. Please check that video out. And like I said, we will be back with more Game of Thrones. We got a lot more post-episode recaps and stuff coming this summer, and especially once in the fall. Thank you everybody for tuning in to the 24s and the Game of Thrones. We are excited, and we cannot wait for next week and cannot wait to finish the season of 24 either. Guys, we will talk to you next time. Later.